It's easy to forget about the invisible systems that keep a country running. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the lifelines of India's economy. Think of it like a giant circulatory system, an intricate web of transport and communication that keeps the nation alive, breathing, and growing. I mean, seriously, think about that for a second. How do you move stuff, connect people, and spread ideas across a place with over 1 billion people? It's not just some logistical puzzle you solve on a whiteboard. It's the fundamental challenge that pretty much decides how fast a country can develop. So how on earth does India do it? And here's the bottom line. Nothing just magically appears where it needs to be. Behind every single thing you buy, every trip you take, there is a massive, complex system that somebody had to design and build. A country's progress literally rides on the back of how well that system works. All right, so to really get our heads around this, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll explore that big idea of a national circulatory system. Then, we're going to hit the ground and look at how the land is connected. After that, we'll see how goods flow through some less obvious channels and how people and information zip around. And finally, we'll tie it all together to see how this whole machine powers the economy. You can almost feel the pulse of a thriving economy, right? That constant rhythm of movement. Well, just like our own bodies, a nation's transport and communication networks are what carry the lifeblood, the goods, the people, the ideas to every single part, making sure no corner is left disconnected. And this really says it all. We're not just talking about concrete, steel, and cables here. We're talking about connection. These are the lifelines that literally stitch a huge, diverse country together, turning what could be isolated towns and villages into one massive, interconnected economic force. So where does it all begin? Well, it starts right on the ground. The most basic, fundamental layers of this whole network are the arteries of asphalt and steel that we see every day, the roads and the railways crisscrossing the entire landscape. Okay, just let that number sink in. 6.16 million kilometers. That is an absolutely staggering figure. To give you some perspective, that's enough road to wrap around the entire planet more than 150 times. This isn't just a bunch of roads, it's a monumental achievement. So why are roads such a big deal? Well, it comes down to their incredible versatility. They're cheaper to build, they can snake their way up mountains where a train could never go, and, this is key, they provide that final, crucial link, that last mile service that gets goods from a highway right to the factory door, or from a farm to a port. Now, this massive network isn't just a random web of asphalt. It's a really smart, organized system. Imagine you're a farmer. Your produce might start its journey on a tiny rural road, then merge onto a district road, connect to a state highway, and finally hit a massive superhighway like the Golden Quadrilateral to get to a big city. Every single layer plays a part. So if roads give you flexibility, railways give you sheer brute strength. For more than 150 years, they've been the absolute workhorse of the nation. They are the heavy lifters, hauling everything from coal to cars and binding the country together with tracks of steel. And what a journey it's been, from a tiny 34-kilometer stretch to a network that spans a continent. But, the real power of the railways was never just about moving goods. They became this incredible force for unity, physically connecting people from totally different cultures and helping forge a single national identity. All right, so we've covered the familiar roads and rails, but there are other lifelines at work, ones that are a bit more fluid. Some are hidden deep underground, while others follow the ancient paths carved by rivers. Let's dive into the world of pipelines and waterways. And here you see this really cool contrast between the old and the new. On one hand, you have pipelines. They're a modern marvel, super expensive to build at first, but once they're running, they move liquids and gases without a hitch. And on the other hand, you have waterways, the original, eco-friendly option. Still the absolute cheapest and best way to move huge, heavy stuff that's not in a rush. Now, when we start talking about global trade, one type of waterway is king, the sea. And this number, wow, 95%. That is the sheer volume of India's foreign trade that moves on a ship. It means the country's economic pulse is directly connected to the world through its major seaports. So we've covered the arteries on land and the currents in the water. Now let's look up to the skies and into the airwaves. We're talking about the networks that move people at hundreds of miles an hour and information at the speed of light.
Air travel isn't just about being fast. It's about beating geography. For places that are locked in by massive mountains or sprawling deserts, like in India's northeast, an airport isn't a luxury item, it is an absolutely essential lifeline, bringing in everything from medical supplies to business opportunities.
And just like physical things have found new ways to travel, so has information. Think about this evolution. India went from perfecting the largest postal network in the entire world, a system of physical mail, to building one of the biggest telecom networks in Asia, connecting the most remote villages with the click of a button.
All of this creates what you could call a shared national conversation, whether it's through the radio, the national TV network, newspapers printed in about 100 different languages, or its world-famous movie industry. These channels weave together a common cultural experience across an incredibly diverse population.
Okay, so we've got this incredible symphony of roads, rails, pipes, and airwaves all working together. But what's the point of it all? What's the end game for all this movement? Well, it's to fire up the engine of the economy, trade. So when you're looking at the global economy, a huge measure of a country's health is its balance of trade. And it's actually a pretty simple idea. Are you selling more stuff to the world than you're buying from it? Getting that balance right, exporting more than you import, is a huge sign of economic strength. And it's a goal that is totally impossible without these efficient transport networks. And there's another kind of trade we sometimes forget about: tourism. When visitors come and spend foreign money, it's basically like an export. But it goes deeper, right? It supports local artists and businesses, promotes cultural exchange, and guess what? All of it depends completely on those same lifelines we've been talking about. And this really brings us to our final core takeaway. These networks aren't just nice-to-haves. They are the absolute, non-negotiable foundation for trade in the modern world. From the smallest village market to the most complicated global supply chain, everything, and I mean everything, depends on these connections. They are, in every possible sense of the word, the lifelines. So that leaves us with one last thing to think about. We've gone on this journey from ancient rivers to digital superhighways. In a world that's changing faster than ever, what do you think is coming next? What will be the next great lifeline that completely redefines the economy of the future?